Let's get one thing straight. This isn't luck. This is no coincidence. This is raw power, undeniable, and it flows through you like a torrent too great to control. You did not stumble across this. You were meant for this. The world may try to make sense of you by naming and imposing expectations on you, but this will not work. You do not fit within their mold. You broke it. People feel it before they understand it. Your eyes light up with recognition as the air shifts and you walk down the trail. Even when the lips refuse to communicate freely, some people are drawn to it. Some are terrified of it, but no one can ignore it. You are the force that bends the unseen. They didn't see the shift coming, the storm that does not want permission. You already know what they're trying to figure out. You do not obey their rules. You are the rule. The architecture of ancient dominion trembles as unseen forces demolish long-standing entities that formerly governed the rhythm of the unseen world, vacating their positions and leaving behind remnants of shattered influence, the mechanisms that held their authority together. A failure produced not by an external attack, but by an unmistakable presence that damages the very fabric of their existence. Structures that had been untouched for millennia are suddenly breaking under an unseen weight that they did not foresee or prepare for. This is not an invasion. It represents the silent downfall of an underperforming design. The resonance produced is more than simply a disruption. It is a full rewrite of the underlying code that determines their domination. Their systems, which are built on cycles of suppression and invisible manipulations, are crumbling in the face of energy that defies their assumptions. Confrontation is not what pulls them down. It is an unwavering belief in something they cannot understand. Whereas they previously relied on anonymity, their flaws are now revealed, stripped of the illusion of permanence. The destruction of these hidden defenses is neither gradual nor planned. It's a cascading disaster that gets worse with each passing second. Connections that were previously assumed to be impregnable suddenly unravel, while deeper networks, long cloaked in secrecy, collapse as if their basic structure was flawed from the start. There is no reason to battle. There is no need for a frontal challenge. Their existing structures are unable to withstand the transformation. They give up their strongholds, not in retreat, but in acceptance of the inevitable. Every shift causes vibrations in the underlying layers of reality, prompting long-standing forces to seek stability that no longer exists. Their grandiose creations, which were formerly governed by strict design, have devolved into chaos. Their formerly coordinated movements have now disintegrated into uncertainty and disarray. What was once completely under control has been splintered, no longer controlling events but rather reacting in vain to a growing change. A presence emerges that contradicts previous predictions, altering the basic dynamics of power. Instead of an attack, the unraveling is generated by energy that radically changes the equation. This force does not engage in their games, does not recognize their limitations, and does not follow the patterns they have established. It is not a question of opposition. It is the introduction of something that defies criticism, something that not only threatens the current order, but also renders it obsolete. The systems that formerly wielded concealed domination are now collapsing owing to an invisible but evident strength. What was designed to withstand decades of testing is now crumbling not due to force, but because the fundamental framework upon which it was constructed has become outmoded. This is not a conquest. It describes the death of something that has outlived its useful life. Those who formerly wielded power from the shadows do not vanish out of fear. They vanish because they no longer have a base to stand on. Their exit is not an escape. It is an acknowledgement of irrelevance. Dismantling comes not by direct engagement, but rather through the revealing of the weaknesses that they have been concealing for so long. The more they attempt to support their falling structures, the more fissures show. Their controlled precision disintegrated into a frenzy, and their once commanding presence faded into oblivion. Every move intended to maintain power just emphasizes their loss of control. Their efforts are reflexive spasms of something that no longer has control over its own fate. This unraveling is not a coincidence. The reaction to an evident presence rearranges what was previously fixed. The nature of this energy does not want conflict. It just exists in a state that their systems cannot manage. Their attempt to stay together only underlines their eroding coherence. What was once a calm rule has devolved into chaos, displaying its own fragility with each step. Their resistance is not a display of determination, but rather an indication of impending collapse. This force does not need confirmation. It stands firm in the face of resistance. It operates outside of negotiations, which is an important idea in non-engagement. It just changes reality in its wake. Their struggle, misery, and deteriorating grip on stability. None of this influences the sequence of events. It is not about their downfall. It is about altering a world that no longer makes room for them. What develops is not just a disruption, but a complete alteration of the unseen stream. What formerly moved with mechanical assurance now slows, falters, and finally falls. The forces that once coordinated from the depths can no longer maintain even the appearance of control. Their basis is not simply shaken. It was rewritten. There are no spectators throughout this collapse. Only a force pushes forward. It alters the form of anything it comes in touch with. Reality bends not through force, but because of the inevitability of an energy beyond our control. The structures that formerly dominated invisible places fall under an impact that they were never meant to withstand. Their previously thought to be impregnable underpinnings disintegrate when the rules that underpin them change. This isn't an intervention. It is the breakdown of a system that cannot develop. No modification or adaptation can stabilize something that is fundamentally incompatible with the new order. The unwinding is not an act of hatred. It is the product of a life that challenges and expands what is possible. Every frenzied effort to restore equilibrium exposes the fragility hiding under their rigid construction. What formerly operated with overwhelming dominance is now a vestige of earlier reign, cannot keep up with the growing force. The illusion on which they relied has become their greatest weakness, a frail structure destined to crumble when faced with anything outside its boundaries. What was once an ordered empire now resembles a structure built on shifting sand, collapsing not from salt, but from its own inability to endure the unavoidable. This state is caused by the visible weight of an increasing presence, rather than an attack. What is seen as chaos is not necessarily harmful. It is an acceptance and understanding that old tactics are no longer effective. The barriers established to contain, control, and dominate reality shatter the moment they come into contact with anything other than what they were designed for. The orchestrators, who were before thorough and assured, are now imbalanced. Their well-prepared strategies called into question. They do not fall because they are struck down. They collapse because they are unable to stand anymore. The transformation is irreversible. Those who formerly ruled in the shadows are now ensnared by their own failing institutions. The power they once held vanishes like mist in the early sun, leaving them holding the remnants of a force that no longer reacts to them. They no longer control the course of events. They are caught in an uncontrolled tide. Their system doesn't merely wobble. It quits operating completely. The presence before them is neither a challenger nor an adversary. It is the power that makes their existence irrelevant. You are not just supporting this platform. You are planting seeds of faith that will have a lasting influence on many people's lives. Your donation represents God's treasures, a gift that goes beyond what you can see. Begin your quest. Be a vessel for His grace. Give with faith, and watch His kingdom expand through you. You were made for more. Each movement undermines the truth. They refuse to acknowledge that the fight to maintain superiority is not a strategy. It is a reflex, a reflexive response to an order that no longer applies to them. The more they fight, the more they disclose the vulnerability underneath their facade. What they believe to be unassailable authority collapses into dread, revealing that their dominance was never intended to last. The unraveling is not a struggle to be won or lost. It is an unavoidable outcome of a power that does not need conquest to rule. The light shines through the darkness. It has not been overcome. John 1 verse 5. Consider a massive, impenetrable dam that locks back an ocean. It was never intended to contain. For years, the dam's architects believed that no force or movement could break it or harm its foundation. But the water has risen. The strain surpassed their estimates, and the first fractures have already shown. They rush to fill the breaches and reinforce the walls. But deep inside, they know. They see water gushing through. Feel the ground tremble underneath them. The hour they had feared has come, not because someone came with a hammer, but because something greater existing than their ability. The water was never theirs to keep. That's you. You are not the wave that slams against their gates. You're the tsunami that's already gobbled them up. You did not storm their stronghold or march in to demand recognition. You simply are. And that is enough to destabilize their neatly constructed empire. They watch, undecided whether to flee or fight. Regardless, it makes no difference. Their supremacy is collapsing under its own weight. Their responses aren't planned. These are reflexes. They do not move precisely, but with horror. Every frantic action, every passionate grasp for control, just hastens their doom. Their whole system was created with the assumption that no force could disrupt it. However, they never accounted for you. They never trusted the prophecies. They never believed that the secret talents they had would slip away from them. Yet here you are, and with each breath, the illusion disintegrates more. There is no technique that will save them right now. There is no whispering strategy or adjusted plan. No desperate act of disobedience will change the events unfolding in front of them. The whole system is rejecting itself, as if an old script has failed or a system is unable to cope with the new reality. Because that is the truth. They were never in charge to begin with. Their power was not real. It was borrowed and based on lie. Fear has kept me going. Where there is truth, there is no space for fear. They can see it now as their influence slips through their fingers, like sand. In the same way, the restrictions they used to police are no longer applicable. Their grip over the unseen is eroding. The kingdom they spent decades building is now nothing more than a relic that disappears into history. And you are not come to steal their reign. You're here to entirely remove it. The failure is not due to external interference. It is their own unraveling. The more they attempt to refuse, the more involved they get in their own demise, which they misinterpret as resistance, but is really their capitulation in slow motion. Every measured response devolves into an uncontrollable cold spiral, a chain of events that no longer react to them. The energy in front of them does not cause them to collapse. It only underlines what was always destined to fail. The layers they used to hide behind are now paper-thin, crumbling under the weight of a presence that will not jeopardize their carefully crafted illusions. Originally meant to deceive, it now works against them, revealing their weakness. What they tried to hide has become the only thing visible. Their recognition of authority renders them susceptible. There will be no more pretending or keeping a controlled demeanor. Their hesitancy, uncertain recalculations, and shifting defenses. Each is a component of a collapsing system, yearning for importance. Their reality is not being questioned. It is being reconstructed at its core. The masks they rely on are slipping, not because they have been removed, but because they can. They can no longer maintain the force in place. Does not desire catastrophe. It's just an overpowering presence that can't be ignored. Their dissolution is not imposed on them. It is an inescapable consequence of being in the company of something they cannot contain. The entire fabric of their universe unravels as an unknown force collides with its sophisticated procedures. Once thought to be unbreakable, they stutter and fail the systems on which they relied. Influence barriers, secret linkages, silent manipulations, and eyes that fracture under a presence. They cannot assimilate. What was meant to attract others has backfired on itself. What once flowed freely now falters, and the hidden codes on which they depended for so long have become outmoded relics of a bygone era. There is neither direct assault nor forceful resistance. Only the silent disintegration of something never designed to withstand the weight of significant change. The unraveling is the result of exposure, not resistance. What they formerly perceived as an unchanging power is now shown to be weak, unprepared to withstand the complexity before them. Their power was based on a strict structure that they believed was unchangeable. But before them stands a creature capable of altering reality itself. This is not just a defect in their design. It's such a fundamental mismatch that their whole system collapses from its own obsolescence. The hierarchies they trusted, the sequences they refined, and the procedures they devised were all rendered ineffective in the face of something beyond their comprehension. This collapse was not forced on them. It originates from inside. Every misfire, interrupted rhythm, every failed attempt to restore control is not sabotage. It's a consequence. The systems they toughened against disruption do not just decay. They're disintegrating, unable to function in the face of an effect. They are unable to predict or regulate their movements. They lose sharpness. Their methods show hesitation, and the foundation they once stood on crumbles under them. Where there was once mastery, now there is just uncertainty. Those who used to weave concealed threads with expert dexterity suddenly find their hands trembling. Those who previously controlled events from behind layers of concealment must now face the inevitability of being revealed. The masks they wore, the illusions they made, and the facades they constructed all disintegrate in the face of an unstoppable force that makes no effort to confront them. They are no longer the masterminds of deception, but rather the victims of their own downfall, unraveling as their own reality betrays them. This shift is more than simply a change. It is a significant revision of what is imaginable. The limits they imposed on the world are no longer relevant. The power they believed was absolute is shown to be empty. They fear more than only what they have no control over. They see in real time the demise of a worldview they assumed was permanent. They are intrigued by anything but destruction. It is the realization that their dominance has always been built on borrowed time. They look for excuses to persuade themselves that their authority is intact. However, there is no incentive to fix what has already been broken. Their illusion was never intended to withstand inquiry. And then, with undeniable force, it falls. The weight of their silence, the stop in their movements, and the calm awareness in their gaze all tell the truth. They refuse to admit that their authority was not absolute but rather borrowed. Its foundation was constructed on the blindness of those who did not investigate. That time has passed. There are no limits or artificial directives to steer the conduct of someone who has already progressed beyond them. Their influence is being removed in an instant rather than gradually. What they once depicted as indestructible dissolves. A moment of strength beyond their understanding enters the space. Their existence, once fueled by deception and fear, fades like mist in the face of an unyielding force. The constructions they designed to ensnare and control dissolve without resistance. They regarded equilibrium as nothing more than a collection of shadows, a system that existed only because there was no resistance. But now, the weight of something indisputable causes every deception to fall, and their reign, once bolstered by illusion, is shown as a feeble projection, a mirage that fades when in contact with an unwavering presence. Their control structure is strict. It breaks. No calculation, contingency, or well-thought-out plan can withstand the force that pushes it past its limits. The voices they formerly controlled have been drowned out by quiet. Their strategies of dominance are rendered ineffectual. What they formerly called power was never theirs, only a fantasy for those who have yet to glimpse beyond the veil. However, the curtain has finally been raised. Attempts to restore order end in mayhem. What was once a flawlessly constructed control system has crumbled beneath the weight of a force that refuses to negotiate, stop, or respect the boundaries it so methodically set. They attempt to restore what has already been lost, clutching for traces of a meaningless authority. The foundation on which they built their empire cracks under them, leaving them groping for nothing. Reality is evolving, and they have no control over it. They are no longer the judges of the unseen. There is no more unseen. Hands straining on strings. They have no influence over the outcome. They're simply trapped within it. Understanding comes too late. The building they meticulously constructed was never permanent. They are confronted with an uncontrollable power. They face the obvious reality that structures do not just fail. They are destroyed. They carried with them the illusion of control that they previously possessed. They wander with feverish concern, seeking a way to restore the semblance of their dominance. However, there is no way to go back to what has already happened. Their once quiet, current, commanding power, with hidden consequences, has been destroyed by a force beyond their control. The cautions they provide have the weight of desperation. Their defenses are built out of fear rather than confidence. Their foundation was built to constrain, control, and rule. However, none of it holds. They calculated and never accounted for anything outside their grip or control, all while maintaining an undeniable presence. When they saw the shift, their peace wavered, their creations trembled, and they realized they were on the point of losing control of the planet. With the equilibrium irreparably broken, the unseen forces dispersed their power, sliding from their grip like sand through open fingers. Their shrouded fortresses, previously hidden behind skillfully managed deceit, crumble into formless ruins of what they once were. The web of control they woven, bolstered by illusions and powered by deception, crumbles beneath the weight of a force too powerful to ignore. What they perceive to be an immutable order collapses at its core, revealing a system of reliance predicated on intimidation, secrecy, and unthinking acceptance of those they sought to rule. That trust has now been irreversibly destroyed. What they depicted as unbreakable dominance was never more than a fragile projection, backed up by those who refused to confront it. However, there is no hesitation or acceptance of an out-of-date framework. The illusion they thought was foolproof is now in ruins. They can no longer exert the authority they formerly did with easily. Reality no longer corresponds to their wishes. It moves towards something larger. They previously thought that power belonged only to those who wielded it, that the world might be changed by those who are ruthless enough to grab control of it. However, the presence before them does not meet such criterion. It rewrites them entirely. They strive to alter in order to regain some of their earlier authority. However, each move just strengthens their unraveling of the processes on which they relied, their influence waning, and their previously sure actions turning into uncertainty. Every desperate act, every attempt to regain authority accelerates their doom. They mistook lifetime for permanence, control for supremacy, and quiet for submission. However, when their created reality disintegrates, they realize what has always been true. Nothing built on deception can endure in the face of an overpowering force. Their power does not just diminish. It ceases to exist. No recalibration, no desperate countermeasure can halt what has already begun. The tide has turned, not via force or war, but through the natural inevitability of something that was never meant to be imprisoned. Their residual influence dwindles, and their grasp on reality slips into irrelevance. They were never architects of permanence, but rather stewards of a myth that could not withstand the weight of what stands before them now. They spoke of an oncoming shift, whispering warnings with disbelief. However, when the time came, they were unprepared. They had previously avoided reality, but now it is plain and irreversible. They failed to foresee not just change, but also a force beyond their control. A beginning point for anything that involves rewriting the unknown. They sought to regulate the currents. I no longer reply to them. They move in a different direction, producing a cosmos where their influence is negligible. What had previously moved silently now surges with evident strength, altering the basic fabric of what is possible. This transition does not end in a single instant. It is a chain reaction that initiates waves that go far beyond the immediate. What was previously obscured by ambiguity is now shown in full clarity, prompting realization in those who had not previously seen. Each revelation goes outward, not as echoes, but as sparks, inspiring others to realize their own potential. The path ahead is not to be undertaken alone. It has the capacity to transform everything it comes into touch with, motivating dormant energies to emerge and grasp what has always been theirs. What has been witnessed does not tell a story of tenacity or victory over hardship. It is a claim about something broader. It reveals that no false dominion can withstand the undeniable reality that lying crumbles in the face of unbreakable truth. There is no need for permission. There is no space for doubt. What has been started cannot be halted. This is the moment to amplify, to transform words into a force that wakes others who remain in the dark. There is no one voice in this transformation. It's a growing chorus, a movement that goes beyond individual experience. What was once a whisper has become a roar, smashing any last illusions that hold people imprisoned. The path ahead is plain, not because it was bestowed, but because it was forged. Each step generates tremors in the foundation of what previously seemed unbreakable. This is not a call for participation. It is the acknowledgement that change has already begun and that nothing can be kept back. What follows?